Cool. Thank you for the short introduction. Well, actually, as you meant, this meetup is for everyone. So I will start rather with rainforest and some biology before we start with the talk. So rainforest is really amazing place where you meet various great diversity of plants and animals and everything. And unlike desert, there is no short supply of water, but there is still a competition for a light. Because there are like many trees, big trees, and so actually there is almost no light which gets to the forest floor. And now in the great nature, some plants are cheating and found the solution how to get the light, and they actually grow from the bottom, from the top of the tree. So you see this plant is actually growing around the trunk tree to get the light. And then once it gets its roots to the floor, to the forest floor, it gets water, minerals, and start to growing. And it starts to grow very fast, strangling the trunk tree, and eventually killing it. And that's actually the reason why I mentioned it. So, by the way, my name is Marcin. As you know already, I work also for HomeGate, as Stefan does, and some other guys here. And today I want to talk with you not about strangling the trees, but about strangling the legacy applications with serverless, by the way. So yeah, the question was already there. Who is working with legacy? I guess more or less every one of us had to do with it. And if not, then we are now building legacy in 1 year or so. So basically the problem with legacy is at some point you cannot deliver at the speed you want to deliver, you cannot innovate. And it gets really difficult even to fix the bug, right? Once you change something, it breaks, and so you want to actually kill it, right? And there are different approaches how you can do it. One approach is actually tried by HomeGate, I guess, like 5 years ago or so, because HomeGate is already 15 years old. So we have a lot of legacy, and there was one try like 5 years ago to re-engineer to rewrite the whole application from scratch at once. So basically, you say, okay, now we don't deliver any feature, but instead we rewrite everything, and then everything is good. The problem with this is that normally you underestimate the complexity of your system, and you end up with time pressure. And by the way, it's waterfall, so you basically don't know what you're doing until you release, if you release at all, right? So it's not really a recommended approach. And another approach is Strangler application. This is actually not my idea. It's idea from Martin Fowler. I know most of you know this guy as old school developer, but he has really great ideas. And he was actually in Australia seeing these strangler wines, and he saw this metaphor between rewriting, re-engineering the system, and trying to kill the legacy one. And so the idea is actually in Strangler application that you build new application around or on the edges of the old one, trying to slowly implement new features and migrating existing one into new system, but still like on this tree which we saw, still built on relying on some of part of the legacy application. And so successively the application is growing, and at some point you can decommission the legacy one because there is basically no features. You implemented everything at some point. The advantage of it is, of course, that you can start quite small, right? So with a small feature, you can build it, as I said, on top of this legacy. And moreover, you can iterate fast. So you can really be go live within 1 week or so. So let us assume we found like new feature, and we say, okay, now we go with Strangler approach and build application for some small new feature. And we estimate it's like about 1 week. It would take us 1 week to develop it. And well, now there is the question, okay, where do I deploy it, right? And then the story begins. So you for sure don't want to deploy where you run your current legacy system. I mean, assuming that it's like vanilla Unix machine or maybe some VMs. Obviously, there are many advantages of having containers, and that's why actually they are so widely adopted. So we would rather go with containers, right? Having containers, you would like also to have kind of system which could help you to manage this application. So, for example, you would take Kubernetes or maybe Docker Swarm. This is actually a survey from this year, which orchestration service is mostly used. So there are still many not using it, most probably legacy, but apart from that, you have Kubernetes and Docker Swarm. Now, remember what we said, this 1 week of implementation of new feature, believe me or not, but configuring, for example, a Kubernetes cluster, that it runs effectively, that it scales, that it's reliable, it's not 1 day task. It's even not 1 week task, it's 1 month, if so, and it requires really deep understanding and engineering know-how to set it up so that it works well. And I mean, there is also another survey which shows, okay, what are the problems you normally struggle with if you set up Kubernetes cluster? And those are really tricky. Like you see, security is the most tricky one, but you have also scaling, you have reliability, monitoring, and all this stuff. And here is the good message. So most of this can be addressed with serverless. It sounds like a silver bullet, but before I say it, don't build your own toaster. That's the message. Don't build your own cluster unless you sell it, but normally you shouldn't do it because you invest time in something which actually does not bring your business forward, right? So this guy said this, and I like it very much. Where does it come from? I don't know whether you know this story or not, but there was a guy, Thomas Tyrus, and he was actually trying to build the toaster from scratch. And you can have a look. He held a TED talk. You can find it, and he actually described how he built it, and it costed like a hell of money. He traveled around the world to take all those materials because it's really like raw, and it worked about 3 seconds, and then it exploded, right? So I guess it's kind of a good comparison between don't try to run your own Kubernetes cluster unless you sell it, and don't build your own toaster. Having that said, what serverless actually does for us? So first of all, you have no servers to manage, and with that, security is still an issue, but on another level. So you don't have to care about patching servers. You don't have to, care about some leaks because basically it's managed for you. Someone does it for you. The same with scaling. So basically, it auto scales on load, and it also auto provisions on load. So you don't have to carry anymore about scaling, auto scaling, and all this stuff. And it has built-in high availability and fault tolerance. And the last but not least, for many might be also relevant, is pay for what you use. And I will also mention about it, why it's actually relevant for strangling an application. So as you guess, I'm talking about serverless because we at HomeGate are using it, and I want to show you how we use it. But before I do it, I just want to clarify a bit on what serverless is, and I guess many of you know it already. This is actually the slide from this reInvent. I took it with my mobile phone, so the quality might be not that good. But serverless is not only the function. Function is only one part. You see here Lambda, which basically helps you to execute your code, your custom code within ephemeral container. But you have like another services, DynamoDB, which is storage offered by AWS. I will stick to AWS as we are using it, but I guess you found the same services on Google Cloud or Azure. I have simply knowledge in those. So DynamoDB, which is like guarantee you 1-digit millisecond response at any scale. It's multi-master, multi-node, and all this cool stuff, which makes sure that it run at every time. You have S3, which is storage, where you can store all the assets you have. SNS, SQS, which is messaging, and so the serverless is actually a combination of both. It's not only function, but also all other services which are also managed for you, so you don't care about them. Having that said, let us go to HomeGate. I assume most of you know HomeGate. We are a real estate platform. We actually help people to find the dream home. That's our motto, and we want to do it, of course, the best here in Switzerland. I will talk about listing. By listing, I mean one line, so one flat, one apartment, or one house in a while. And you see we have here also the functionality, which is Suche speichern. Sorry, it's on English, but it means subscription, save subscription. So basically, if you search, for example, for this region, which is here, send Maurice, you can save it, and then if there are any objects which meet those criteria, later you got the notification via email or push notification. Why I mention it? Because I want to talk just briefly to give you an idea how we re-engineered it with this Strangle approach. So this is actually the legacy application, how it works. So realtor are those people who have these floods and want to publish on our platform. They export from their server or software. They use professional software to FTP server, and then there is in this legacy, in this huge monolith, there is importer, which basically fetches the files from the FTP server, writes to database, and then at some point Search API reads the data and presents this in the form as we saw before. Now, during the re-engineering, we started our first application was importer and the notification what I mentioned, the subscription and notification what I mentioned before. So how we did it? We actually intercepted this event of FTP server when new file is uploaded. We wrote some small adapter, and here we began actually to work with a new application. And as you see, we still write to a legacy database, and because Search is not migrated, that's why we have to pump it to the legacy system. But at the same time, we publish this new listing event on messaging bus. So this is how it works. And now from another side, we started at the same time, more or less, re-engineering the notification. And the idea is that you simply send a notification, which is we check what is the new listing, and then if it matches, for example, to for a region which was selected by user, then you got the notification, right? At that point, there was no message bus, so we had to extend our trigger. And once the listing was written by the old importer into the database, it triggered a message, and we got this listing and can do matching on that. So. And at the end, what we have now currently is actually we could kill this killer with this trigger because now we have messaging bus. We could also kill the old importer because everything goes now through the new importer. And so you see, slowly this monolith is dying, and we hope it will die quite fast. And that's our hope. But you see the point how it works, right? So we work around the monolith, but try to find the ways to kind of make the code dead and not use it anymore. Yeah, and why serverless is actually so applicable for this Strangle application. First of all, as I mentioned, you are really productive from the first day. So you, if you have an idea, you can deploy it within short time, and you don't have to care about, as we talked about before earlier, so clusters and all this stuff, which is really tricky. From my perspective, it's also easier to innovate, especially if you have this vast number of services which are provided to you, which you can use, and you don't need to bother, okay, now I will have to, install it and then also manage it afterwards, and it costs. If you don't like it after a while, you can remove it, you can experiment quite easily, and you pay for what you use. And this is actually nice with serverless, because if you see the system, what we did is we didn't kill this at once. We simply do like 10% of traffic going through the new importer, then 20%, and at the end it was 100%. But at the very beginning, as it was 10%, we paid only for 10%, right? So it is also really cool. As long as you don't use the application entirely, you pay only for that what you use, which is cool. Another point what I want to mention actually, and we see this development at HomeGate, is serverless supports DevOps culture. Why? Well, some might see this, development of functions that you cannot run them locally as a problem. But once you somehow get this switch, it's actually a blessing, because then developers are kind of forced to also, provision the stuff, to write the infrastructure as a code, to be able actually to deploy it and to run it. And this is somehow what something what then enforce or how to say enables this DevOps culture. Not only that, but it helps really. So at least from that, what we said. And I see I have duplicate, so it's really like I believe in it. And events are kind of first-class citizens with serverless. So as you saw in this graph before, we did some interceptions and eases if you can really trigger the Lambda and work with those events. Okay, so that's it. I mean, it's 15 minutes. I hope it was more or less 15 minutes, and maybe a bit more. So strangle your application with serverless, and if you don't have any legacy or you don't have this prior to strangle it, maybe you might want to join HomeGate and help us strangle our monolith so that we are done maybe by the end of the next year. And once again, Twitter, that's me, LinkedIn, and we are using AWS, as you already noticed. Our goal is to stay entirely serverless with the platform. We use TypeScript and Vue.js, and yeah, that's basically it. And I'm not sure I put the beer slide, but I don't know. Is there another? Is there another talk? Okay, so still no beer. So it's a teaser. It will come soon, right? So thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, there is one question. Yes.